Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGig webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow as professionals. With this principle in mind, we have initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of today's session is when to go in for automation, and this is the 23rd session in the software testing series. Our guest speaker today is Mr. Avneet Singh, Product Development Manager at Engineer Technologies. Avneet has over 14 years of cross-functional experience in software testing. He has a diverse experience in working in startups as well as organizations like Aon Hewitt, Mahindra Satyam, GlobalLogic, Quark, where he earned numerous awards and certifications. He has been instrumental in setting up and development of highly productive, cost-effective teams from scratch for software quality testing, test automation, and technical consulting. Currently, Avneet is working as a product development manager in Engineer Technologies and is responsible for developing complex scalable systems. He is an accountable and result-driven strategic professional who excels at managing projects, collaborating with project teams, interfacing with clients, and deploying technology to build successful solutions for the clients. So without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker. Over to you, Avneet.
Yeah, thanks for such a generous introduction. So I'll just start sharing my screen and then we can start the session. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, Avneet, your screen is visible.
All right. So let's start over. So the topic for today is when to go in for automation. And while sorry, just okay. So while navigating to this topic, I'll just like to show the agenda for today's topic. The agenda is, first of all, we'll cover the need for automation testing. Then we'll go over some of the basic myths of automation, which I've just taken the feedback from my experience. Then we'll just discuss that are all the projects automable, or do we really need automation? Then we'll cover up to the factors to be considered for the automation, and then we'll have some discussion of the points on when to automate and how to automate, and then I'll briefly cover up some of the brief topics that or the yardsticks that we should use while selecting a right automation tool for our application. And at the last, I'll show you the a model automation process flow which I've been using over the past so many years. So moving on to the first topic, that is the need for automation testing. Well, the first and the basic need is when we need to execute some tests repeatedly over and over again. So the automation testing is needed when you have to repeat the same test again and again over a period of time. So with each release, if you have to manually execute the same test cases for, let's say, regression testing, and then when you require resources to execute the test cases of a previous modules and also the new module, and the modules keep on increasing and increasing. So it is not feasible for a manual tester to just keep on testing all the new modules as well as testing the previous modules also. So in order to see that everything is accurate, consistent, and reliable, we would definitely need automation testing. So in order to explain it further, I'll just take an example of a banking application. And in this banking application, if you look at the banking application, which has different modules like saving accounts, we have loans, insurance, fixed deposits, credit cards, stocks, etc. So these are lots of new and modules which we need to build up in a new banking application. So the application is developed in modules and released to the customers to use it. At the later stages, different modules based on the priority are integrated to the existing ones. For example, first of all, we release the saving account, and then the developers start working on the loans, and then when the loans model is ready, then they release a loan to the testing team and they have to test. So let's take an example that the saving In order to test the saving accounts module, 10 testers are needed, and around 1,000 test cases needs to be executed in just 1 month. So we have the testing team ready, and 10 testers are executing 1,000 test cases in 1 month. So that is a pretty much an okay scenario. But let's say after some point of time, loans model is also developed, and then the loans module is also it also requires the same amount of testing effort, that is 10 testers with 1,000 test cases in 1 month. But we have a limitation of only 10 testers in an organization. So see the huge burden on the testing team, that they have to test the loan modules as well as the saving modules. We have to do a regression on the saving modules to ensure that when we are integrating the loans module into the system, there is no breakage in the saving modules as such. So in a month's time, they have to test the loans module and also test the saving module for regression. So this is quite a huge effort. And if this continues for all modules, and at the end of the final release, which we assume as release 8, for example, the team cannot do much because they have to do the regression testing for all the modules within the same 1 month. And this will definitely increase the resource cost, that if we have to, for example, we need to acquire new testers, so that will also increase the resource cost. So this is one of the examples that in this particular case, we have to go with automation, and this would really bring down our costs. So the next part is when we have to speed up the execution. So when we say that we need to speed up the test execution, it means that if we have to execute, let's say in the previous example only 1,000 test cases manually, it might take around 1 month or maybe 30 days minimum. But if we convert these test cases into test scripts and run them through an automation tool, it would take very less time, maybe around about 3 to 5 days or so. So the point to note over here is that in a less span of time, you can actually run more number of test scripts, which not only reduces the time but also speeds up the execution tasks. I can also say that this is due to the fact that these scripts can work unintended in an isolated system. Even if you are out of the work, maybe at night you go home, but still the scripts are still running. So that saves a huge amount of time and money. So in this particular example which I've taken in the case of automation, so 11,000 test cases can be executed in 1 month. So this is just a hypothetical example. The next scenario is to achieve improved test coverage. So this is also interlinked with the above steps in the sense that if the test execution speed up, naturally you will cover more test scripts or less test cases, which mean your coverage is definitely more than what you would do manually otherwise. The next one is to ensure consistency, accuracy, and efficiency. So what does it mean? So it means that no matter how many times you run this test script, it will take the same amount of time, and it will also give the same result, which means that the tests are very much consistent, accurate, and efficient. So automation tool is not a human person who would maybe after a few tests he would need some rest or something like that. The next one is reliability and transparency. So if we look from the above point, we can say that the test scripts which we run or execute gives an understanding that the tests are reliable and also transparent. So we would have all the tests, all the details at the end of the testing cycle, that how many test cases were executed, and also we have different testing tools which take the regular snapshots at different point of time, and it will let us know that for example, test case number 347 was ran in this particular time frame, and here's a screenshot of this particular test case. Next point is, and this is a very important point, is the need of automation testing is to fetch good returns on investment. Obviously, the testing tools are not very cheap. They involve huge costs. They are expensive tools, and we have to involve the cost of the training team also. So initially, the company may feel, or maybe you as managers may feel, that the tool is very costly, But when you use it over a period of time, we actually see the returns on investment is huge, generally huge. So let me put it in this way, that if you feel at some point of time you need to increase the resources for some work in future, and if you feel that instead of hiring more resources, you can invest that amount of money in a tool, and then and then when you are executing using a tool and you reach a point wherein the tool efficiency is much more than a person's efficiency, then it will save huge cost to the company or the organization. The last one in this particular series, in this area is quality. So if we look at all the points that we had discussed above, so it would greatly let us know that the quality of the application is also increased, because every test has been executed at least once or maybe many times while doing regression testing, and the quality of the testing also increases. So the next topic is myths of the automation. People usually feel, or I would say I've seen some of the development managers who feel that automation is a magic wand. So if we need to test a huge application, they would just say that, okay, you go ahead and automate it, and I want the results in the next week. However, this is not feasible. Uh, Automation is, I would say that automation is not a magic wand, and you need to use automation to test specific scenarios only. Automation cannot be generalized and cannot be used in every kind of application. So automation can do, I agree that automation can do wonders if it is used in a right way and in the right application. So as we all know that humans are not identical, and we all differ by some of the characteristics. Similarly, applications that we develop cannot be the same. They may be similar, but they may not be absolutely same, that one automation strategy can be worked to all the organizations, to all the applications. So all the applications will have their own automation strategies, and we need to be very careful while designing these strategies. One more thing that generally QA managers say, that we don't need any kind of automation plan. The test plan is sufficient, and we just here's the test plan and go ahead and start the automation. However, we should be very candid in saying that we need to create a separate automation plan, which is quite different than a normal test plan. So let's take an example. For example, you and your coworker just arrived in a client location in another city nearby. Maybe you are going to some other city for doing some kind of client work of the client. And before leaving the trip, you just looking for a road map because you are not aware of that particular city. But your friend says that that particular person is already aware of that city, and we can just go without a map. And after 2 hours on the road, you are driving to that city, you are hungry, and your petrol tank is also running on empty. And then you realize that actually you have lost a way. So you stop at the petrol pump to buy a map and ask them for directions. So it happens the same way when we are doing the testing. So over here, the automation plan that we need to discuss, it serves as a roadmap which tells you how you can attain a clear view of your scope, the resources that you would need, and it will also serve as a roadmap to follow to achieve your objectives, and a way to measure how far you can go for your goal. And it provides a focus, and it also identifies the risk while you can do with the automation. The next point is to use the best. People generally feel that if we use the best and the most powerful automation tool available in the market, our application will be successful. However, this is not the case. This will not, using the best tool, for example, at this point of time, you can say that the QTP has captured around maybe more than 70% of the market. So QTP is an ultimate tool for your application. So this is not true. Every application is different, and every automation tool is designed, specifically designed for some applications keeping in mind. So in this particular case, for example, I'll take another example. For example, you buy a very high-end car. Suppose you love Ferrari, and you get it for $1 million. and then but you are actually driving it in India. And in India also, if you go to some of the remote villages, you will not find the roads for which you can drive a Ferrari. So taking an expensive tool is not the only solution. To select a tool, you will need to consider factors such as budgets, the applications technology, maybe the engineer skills, the training curve, vendor support, etc. So all of these factors have to be taken care of while you are selecting a good automation tool. So I would go to these factors in more detail towards the end of my presentation. The next point is, generally people say just automate without any kind of framework. You have the tool, you have the resources, your resources is such a great expert. They have a great expertise in coding, so you can just go and automate, and you don't actually need a framework. Well, this is also not true, because I've practically experienced some of the huge automation failures when we have done a very good amount of coding, but since we don't have a good automation framework in place, there was some kind of confusion. For example, some of the files were overwritten, or there were some other issues. So even if you have a team of superheroes, so that cannot guarantee anything. For example, you must have watched a movie that is the Avengers. So in that movie also there were five superheroes, and they were focused on the entire movie was focused on them. But you have to use those superheroes in an adequate manner so that you can uh, find some innovative solutions. So this point would mean that we definitely need a good automation framework to work on. The other point that I've seen generally is 100% regression tests can be automated. If you have discovered any kind of regression test, so this particular test has to be automated. However, this is also not the real case scenario, because there are some regression tests which we cannot automate, for which we need to have some kind of manual intervention. To automate a test case, it needs to be the test case needs to be very much tool friendly from the technology perspective. They should have the correct data. They should be free from any kind of human interaction, and most importantly, it should be stable. On the stability part, I'll come over it in a later stage. And then a test case that is going to be automated should be required at least 3 times minimum. For example, there should not be a case that you are running a test case just only once or maybe twice. It is not at all feasible to automate it. You need to automate only those scenarios which you run at least a couple of times in a maybe release or in an year's time frame. So this actually brings about the efficiency of the automation tool. So what I've seen in my past experience is that in the best of the scenarios, if your regression script, or I would say the regression suite, is very well documented, very well written, so only 75% to a maximum of 85% of the regression scripts can be automated. I've not seen an automation which could cover all the 100% regression scripts. Well, the next slide would display some of the you can say characteristics or yardsticks which you can use to see whether you actually need automation in your application or not. So the first step to determine that you actually need an automation is to define the testing scope. You should be very clear on the scope of your testing, because each organization believes that in its own requirements in the software test automation. So considering the organization's requirements, test automation activities can be performed with 3 different kind of scopes. I've just highlighted 3 scopes because I've just broadly classified all, the majority of the organization's work in these 3 scopes. That is enterprise-oriented. Enterprise-oriented means that the test automation is done to support different product lines and projects in the organization. So there's one automation strategy and it will support all the different project lines and the projects in the organization, because they work in a very similar kind of architecture. The next one is the product-oriented approach. The product-oriented means that the test automation activities focus towards specific product line of the application. So for every product line, they have a different automation strategy. And the third strategy or the third approach, which is quite common in the organizations, is the project-oriented. In the project-oriented strategy, the test automation effort focus towards a specific project. It is different for each and every project. So you need to identify that what is the strategy that your organization is using and your organization is used to, and then is your project ready a good candidate for testing, first of all. So we need to identify the testing scope. The next step is to identify the testing needs, and what exactly do you need to test. So once the testing scope is identified, the testing scope, the testing needs to be identified. So based on the application's requirements, types of testing that need to be performed are identified. So basically, if we have the requirement that we need to test the system, but what type of testing strategies would we would use? For example, like I was mentioning, the enterprise-oriented testing strategy. For example, in that enterprise-oriented testing strategy, in testing scope, product A would require a functional testing, and product B would require a web service testing, product C would require a performance testing, and so on. So every product will have a different requirements or different needs of testing. So we have to differentiate this thing, that if a product B is requiring this load testing, so we cannot use functional automation, or we cannot do any kind of functional testing in that particular product. Going to the next step is the automation needs. So the testing requirements and their nature is studied for the application. Each application has its own actions or validations for testing. So let me take an example. For example, we have a scenario that we have an application for which we need to do form validation functionalities, database validation, and accessibility functionalities needs to be validated. So we can very well say that if we need to do some kind of form level validations or database level validations, so these we can easily do the automation. So in that case, we can mark this test case or maybe the test scenario as it can be automatable. So for an example, let's say another example is that for an application, all the web service methods needs to be validated. So this would also include the delay time for the request response from the third-party systems. So we generally categorize these kind of needs and say that what all scenarios can be automated. The next step is to identify a tool or the automation tool. So we have to take the automation tool which can be useful in our own types of applications. So I will be talking about the entire evaluation process in much more detail towards the end of my presentation. So maybe we can take up this point over there. The last point is the automation feasibility. Once we have done the entire analysis in this particular step, we can actually say that how much percentage of our testing can be automated. So every tool has its own limitations, and once we conduct all the feasibility study, we evaluate that, okay, what we think that can be automatable, but however there is no such tool in the market which can automate this particular functionality. So we have to take the tools also into the consideration, and we need to do a proper feasibility analysis. So once this feasibility study is complete, it would result in listing the requirements that can be automated. Also, based on the nature of the requirements, the automation feasibility needs to be identified, and this is a very important step. So once we have a clear idea on what all we need to automate, we can go towards the factors that needs to be considered for doing our automation. So the first factor and the most important factor is committed management. Till the time the management is not committed towards automation, you as a maybe automation engineer, maybe a test lead, or maybe a QA manager will not be able to succeed in automation. because we have to take things like time plan approval. So in the time plan approval, we need to take the investment from the management of the time needed for delivering the framework. Or big, uh, the only thing is that we need the resources, we need the tool, we need the investment. So, so the investment time is also a very important step. Then the next point is necessary steps to be taken to make the stakeholders, management, and the customer understand the importance of this one-time investment. So we need to bargain with the management. We need to tell them the importance, and we need to develop some kind of ROI scenarios also. That if we take this particular automation tool, this is the investment that is required, and this is the benefits that we can result out from this kind of investment. Then the last point is the scheduled time plan approval. So we have to take this approval from the management. And the other point is commitment on the priority also. So the commitment from the management and the senior management on the priority assigned to this activity till the completion of the complete automation framework is developed. So once we get a priority, because what happens generally is that we have a separate automation team, and that team is working on automating the entire product, but somehow due to some kind of pressures from the client side, they are told to stop the automation activities and pitch in and do the manual testing and deliver the product first, because that gains a high priority. So till the time the automation does not get a good high priority, we will not be able to do justification with the automation part. The other factor that should be considered is budget cost. So a dedicated budget has to be allocated, which would include the cost related to the testing tool or the development, the deployment, and the resourcing, and the training part. Training is also very important for every tool. So in addition to all of these points, so here are these points that we need to dedicate the budget for all of these costs. And then the maintenance cost is also one of the important factor, and it should be included. It should be always included. The next part is the process part, and this process is talking about the well-defined quality control processes or the testing execution standards. So these standards should be of a very well defined. Then there should not be any kind of ad hoc testing, because automation will not sponsor some ad hoc testing, and we will not be able to do justice with the with the application if we are doing the ad hoc testing, because each and every test cases and test scripts that needs to be automated, it has to be finalized. The next part is to define the tests. So defined test means that we need to have very definite test cases that we have identified for doing the automation. And then we have to define the test coverage also. So the test coverage means that how much percentage of this particular module should be tested through the automation tool, and what should be the manual coverage. The next part is to define the test criteria at each stage. So by defining the test criteria for each stage, we mean to say that at every stage of the life cycle of the application, we have to define the test criteria. For example, when we have only 2 modules for testing, so our test criteria will be to test only 2 modules, module 1 and module 2. And when we have module 3 also coming into the picture, so the test criteria would be to do a function testing of module 3, and as well as do a regression testing of module 1 and 2. So these are the entire process that we need to define before starting off with the automation. The next point is dedicated resources. So this is a very important factor wherein we have to dedicate the resources, or by dedicating the resources, which I mean to say that a dedicated automation team is needed for effective test automation. So if we have some kind of a non-dedicated team, for example, if a person has assigned part-time for automation activities and part-time is doing a manual testing, so obviously the pressure, some point of time there would be a huge pressure from the client, and he will not be able to do justice to the automation, and he would focus towards more of a manual testing. So we have to focus towards the specific part of the project. For example, if a person is assigned to do the scripting part, this person has to focus on the specific requirements which he has, and he has to do scripting and nothing else. Then generally what happens is that there are lots of sharings of tools uh, and information between the project teams. For example, we have some limited licenses of the tool, and that licenses are shared among multiple teams. So we should have one dedicated license for a particular team in order to do justification to the automation, because we cannot say that we are not doing automation because the tool is not opening up or the license is not there. So we should reduce the sharing of resources as such. The next point is to is for some kind of efficient collaboration and coordination among the teams. So how does it happen? So lots of times I've seen that the automation tests are poorly maintained or are not reused. They are not integrated due to the lack of efficient collaboration and coordination among team members. So this should not happen. If you are planning for doing an effective automation, you should provide some kind of strategy in your automation strategy document or in the automation plan, and you should uh, define a mechanism of collaborating and the coordination among the various teams which are related to each other. Going to the next point, we have dedicated resources. Realistic expectations. So in this realistic expectations, uh, we should not set any kind of unrealistic expectations. So how we can reduce setting up of unrealistic expectations is that, for example, we have just discussed that all tests cannot be automated. Then there will be no immediate payback for investment. It will have to run for a couple of cycles or a couple of releases when the investment can give you some good returns. The next point is to provide adequate ramp-up time, because every team needs to be ramped up to a new tool if we are using a new tool, or maybe we have a tool and we have a new resource, and we should give adequate ramp-up time to a new resource. And then people feel that if we are taking a tool like QTP, you can just do a record and playback and it should work fine. Well, this is not as simple as just record and playback. We have to do scripting. We have to customize the tool based on our own functionality, based on our own application. So it does not mean that if we have a tool, you can just do a record playback and then you don't need any kind of technical skills to use a particular tool. Then again, the same point, no single tool supports all systems or applications. There are lots of tools in the market which are dedicated for some kind of systems or some kind of applications. So just go ahead and do a market research of those tools and take the best possible tool which suits your application, and which you should not go with the wind that if 10 organizations are using QTP, I should also use QTP. The next part is not all testers can write scripts. So you should be, the management should be very well aware that testers, if they are manual testers, you should not force them to write the scripts, because you will not get that kind of quality from them. There are another field of study, that is the automation testing. People or the testers who are interested in doing the automation, they basically learn those techniques. They learn, for example, QTP needs VB scripting. So a person who is good in VB scripting can work better in QTP. For example, Selenium uses Java. So person who is good in Java technology, that person can work on Selenium. So these are some of the expectations that we should all adhere to. Now the next part is when to automate. So we have covered the factors, we have covered all the basic requirements or the prerequisites for doing an automation. So now let's come to when to automate. When should we actually start the automation in your project? So we should start once the product or the application is stable. So this is the minimum requirement, that is the stability of the product should all be there. It should not be a case that you are doing an automation, you have completed around 70 to 80% of automation, and then there is a change request coming from the clients or coming from the management, and you do some kind of changes in some most important functionality, which has resulted the entire wastage of the entire automation effort. So you should wait for the product to be stable. Once the application is very much stable, you should start off with the automation. The next point is testable interface is identified. So we need to identify the testable interface. As you know that we have around 3 kinds of interface in a normal application. One can be command line interface like a CLI. The second kind of interface can be some kind of APIs or application programming interfaces, and then the third one can be GUIs or the graphical user interfaces. So normally in any kind of application, you take any application, you will find one of these 3 interfaces. So in some applications, you may find all of these 3 interfaces, but many will have just 1 or 2 of these kind of interfaces. So these interfaces are available to you for your testing. So by the nature, APIs and command line interfaces are very much easier to automate than GUIs. And and I'm just telling it out of my own experience that it takes very little time to execute the command line interface and the application programming interface, that APIs, because they don't have a complicated front end. You can easily automate them. However, GUIs are or GUIs are very difficult to automate. The next point is automation scope is defined. So we should have a very well defined scope of automation. We should not say that all things can be automated and we could just start automating and just automate each and every test case. So we have discussed this before also, that this automation scope should be very well defined. The next one is identify test cases to be automated. So once you define the automation scope, you will definitely identify the test cases which you need to automate. So you have to identify those test cases. You have to mark them as maybe take them out of the manual test suite and put them in an automation test suite, so that you do not end up putting in double efforts by doing the both manual and automation testing on the same test cases. The next part is our test cases have to be fine-tuned. Well, this is a point which is normally not followed in most of the companies or most of the organizations. So we need the test cases to be fine-tuned for automation. So the expectation level from the test cases for automating is widely different from the expectation from manual testing point of view. For example, there are some kind of manual regression tests which are usually documented, so that each test picks up the data from a preceding test and passes the data to a new test. So in the normal manual regression test, one test case is not mutually exclusive. It is dependent on the preceders and the succeeders. So in automation, one of the basic requirements is that the test case has to be mutually exclusive, that it should not be dependent on any kind of test case. The other example that I can feel or I can see is that the test case should be equipped with the proper test data. For example, if there is a functionality of uploading a file to a server, so it should explicitly tell us which file to upload and what should be the optimum size of the file. Either it should be 32 bytes or maybe 512 KB or anything like that. So it should explicitly tell us that what are files should be used for doing this uploading. So we have to do such kind of fine-tuning to the test cases before we actually start the automation, as it would reduce the actual time for developing the scripts. And it would also guarantee that the tool would actually execute the test case in a way that it is desired. The next point is again the same, that the test right automation tool needs to be finalized. I'm putting this point again and again because it is a very important factor, and we have to find the right automation tool. I'll come back to the to it once again towards the end of my session, wherein I will tell you the yardsticks to be followed. The another important point is to find the right mode, or we have to find the right framework for our automation testing. For example, there are some frameworks like we have keyword-driven framework, we have hybrid framework, we have data-driven frameworks. So we need to calculate the efficiency of our organization by selecting the right testing framework, automation testing framework. So these were the various points that we have discussed. Now I'll just show you a process flow that while doing the automation. So first of all, you have to check the stability of the AUT, means the application under test. Then we have to decide the interface, which this is just a snapshot of all the points that we had discussed before, just how we can follow with a good automation approach. Then the third one should be the defined automation scope. Once the automation scope is defined, then we have to identify the test cases that needs to be automated. Once we have identified the test cases, we have to fine-tune those test cases so that we can easily do the automation on them. Then we have to select the right tool, and then we have to select the right mode, means the right framework. We have to select the right framework, automation framework. And then once we have done all this groundwork, we are sure to have a success in automating our scenarios. So this was all about the best practices of doing the automations and everything. So now we should follow what practically steps we should follow and how we could automate. So like I said before, that a good test framework should be identified. So once we have identified the good framework, we have to see the test scripting standards, because now this is more of a, you can say, a development criteria, that while developing the test scripts, we have to write the test scripts for different automation tools. For example, like I said, we have to use VB scripts for in most of the testing tools like QTP, rational tools, and so we need to follow good scripting standards. So scripting standards are also similar to coding standards, and there should be some kind of checklist that should be developed for review of the test scripts also. So if we see that the software practices followed in the development of an application, they are quite, we should also follow those practices into the development of our scripts, because development of scripts is quite similar to development of an application. So whatever tool is chosen, ultimately a tool will only be as good as the process which is being used to implement the particular tool. The next point is to develop the reusable functions. Reusable functions are very, very important, and all the you can say separate attributes should be captured in different functions. So for this, I just mean that the steps among the steps which are quite common, they should be converted into a function, and then we can just call the function over and over again. This would also reduce the lines of code that we actually generate, and it will also bring in some kind of efficiency and also maintainability. For example, if we need to make some change, we will just change it in a one particular function, and it will be reflected in all the other code that we have. Next part is identification of common functions. So these are the common function and reusable functions differ in such a way that common functions are not functions which belong to a kind of technical uh, flow. Common functions are functions like login script. There is a function which just does a login into your application. It will just start at the login screen, take the parameters like your username and password, put it over there, and then this function will simply end. Or maybe another function, another example of a common function is writing the log files. For example, this function can take the error message, the severity level of the error message, and the path and the name of the log file as input parameters. So depending on the requirements, more of such kind of common functions can be identified, and they should be written over there. The next point is the scripts should be extensible. By extensible, I mean that the script should be such that some kind of additional test cases can be added to a same script. So additional test cases make cater to testing enhanced functionalities of an existing feature as well as testing new features also. So this suite should have such an architecture that it is extensible both in terms of being able to add more functions and also in terms of being able to add test cases to an existing functions or existing scripts. This is a very important point that proper logs should be generated, because most of the times what happens is that we are running a test suite and then in the middle of the test suite it just fails, and we do not know the exact reason why it is failing. So we should generate proper logs. For example, sometimes what happens is that the script just fails. It's a kind of false alarm that fails because of, let's say, the network is not responding, or maybe any other factor, or maybe there is a flaw in the test suite, or maybe a mistake in setting up for the test, or there is an actual defect in the product. So we have to distinguish the exact reason why the script has actually failed. Was it an actual defect, or there was some kind of environmental factor which has caused it to fail? So so all this information can be gathered from the logs of its own. So, but a good test automation suite with ambiguous logging messages is worse than manual testing. I would say that if you are doing an automation testing and you got an error and you're not able to find out the exact cause of the error, so that is, you have wasted the entire time and effort, and you could have done it manually. So logging is very important. This is a point of which belongs to the framework, the capability of the framework. So this any framework should allow selective test execution. So by selective test execution, I mean that it should provide the independence of executing individual test cases, or at least the test cases belonging to the same module. I can just mark a selection. I want to run only test cases 5, 6, 7. I will not run any other test case. So I should be able to select those particular test cases and run it. This is another important factor, that is to clean exit on abrupt script termination. Suppose what happens is that while executing the script just terminates, and before the termination, it has done some kind of changes in the application. So it should revert back those changes before it actually terminates, or maybe we can write some kind of flows over there, some kind of function that is called the ending functions over there, that as soon as the script is terminated, these kind of common functions would run and would uh, backfire all the scripts that we have done. The next point is that there should not be any dependency on the individual test cases. They should be very much self-sufficient, and every test case should have its own entry and exit criteria, and it should not depend on any other test case. Whenever we write a test script, we should ensure that it is equipped with proper test data. So the test data may consist of a simple data import as required by the test cases to supply parameters to the functions for testing different conditions. Like, for example, there are some kind of numeric inputs or some alphanumeric inputs, non-alphanumeric inputs, etc. So, or it may, these are one way that test data. The other way of test data would be some kind of files, some specific files that needs to be supplied to the test cases to test particular functionality of the application. So, for example, the automation suite has to execute a particular test case which would require some kind of file uploading functionalities. So we should have files of all the different sizes. For example, we should have a file of 10 bytes, 64 KB, 1 MB, 30 MB, and so on. So we should have the test data ready before we actually start the automation. The other point is dynamic generation of names for temporary file and input data. So this is also very important, because whenever we are running the test cases through automation tool, so it generates some kind of temporary files or some kind of temporary input data. So we need to have a dynamic generation of the names. For example, if we have named it as ABC, and suppose there is one script which would run and result creation of a temporary file named as abc.xls. So this abc.xls, if there is already existing, it will provide an issue. For example, it may or may not be able to overwrite the existing file. So all the temporary files which are automatically being generated by the test suite should have a dynamic generation of the name. It can be any kind of alphanumeric string, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and every time it can increment by 1 for each new file. So this is also a very important point that we should keep in mind while generating the test cases. The test script should be very much user-friendly. If you have written a test case and if you are assigned to some other project, any other tester from your company or from outside should come and read your test script and see what is actually happening. So all the comments should be there, and it should be in a very well-written way. Then the error recovery scenarios should also be very much robust, because error recovery scenarios means that there is some kind of invalid input. For example, while you are going, while the test is running on, there is a pop-up from some other application which would result a test to fail. So these kind of error recovery scenarios should be able to handle those particular pop-up and should be able to remove that pop-up so that your test execution remains unaffected. And then separate scripts for cleanup. When you have done the entire, when you have completed your entire execution, so some kind of cleanup script should run, which should delete all the temporary files that were generated during the course of the execution, and delete all the temporary factors which would affect the future runs. So these the type of cleanup script should be written at the end of your automation script. So over here is a brief overview of the yardsticks or the checklist that you should go for selecting any kind of a good automation tool. I've been talking about this many times during the course of my presentation, that we need to select a good automation tool. So these are some of the points which you should keep in mind while selecting a good automation tool for your own application. For example, environmental support. what type of environmental support is being given by various vendors. First of all, you have to identify all the vendors, and then you can use this kind of checklist to evaluate the performance of those tools or those vendors. The second point is ease of use, how easy the tool is to use, how much training time you would afford to give to your own employees. And then what are the testing of database, for example, how robust the database of that particular application is and what all databases it can support. Then object identification, can it identify all the objects, because there are some older tools which are not able to identify the objects of, let's say, jQueries or maybe HTML5. We have some new objects which are not identified with the old tools. Then image testing. This is gaining importance nowadays when we are very much concentrating on the graphical user interface. So this is an important factor that we should consider in testing, that is image testing. Then what are the other error recovery scenarios that we have? So what are the other error recovery scenarios that you have? Sorry. All right. And then we can the next part is object mapping. So there are lots of object mapping tools that are available, and all these tools, the object mapping tools, for example, we have in QTP, we have this object spy, which can look for the properties of the objects and then map it to its object mapping repository. Then there are some scripting languages used. So some tools support more than one scripting language. So obviously that particular tool is preferred over the others, because you can have multiple testers with varied skill sets work on this particular tool. Then we have the support for various types of tests. For example, support for functional testing, test management. For example, if you see the HP product, so it is very well integrated with the test management, like the HPQC, HP Quality Center, HP QTP. So they are very well integrated. So these are the test management capabilities. Some of the test scripts, like Selenium, it can work on any kind of mobile device also. So that is preferred. So you should also look out for the support for various types of domains or various types of devices. The next point is support for multiple testing frameworks. So testing frameworks is a framework that you developed in-house in your organization. It should support your own developed framework. Then easy to debug automation software scripts. So debugging is a very important feature when we have to do the maintenance of the scripting. You can write a script, but you have to maintain it for a long time. So this particular feature is quite important and should be taken care of. The next one is ability to recognize objects in any environment. So there are lots of objects in environment. It is similar to the object identification that we discussed above. You should be able to recognize and identify the objects in any kind of environment. For example, a web-based application, a client-server application, so they would have different objects. It should be able to recognize those objects. The next one is extensive test reports and results. So test reporting is also very critical part of a testing tool. If a testing tool can do very good testing but cannot does not have a capability to report good or the report correctly, so we will not be able to go with that particular tool, because it will not give us a proof of its own execution. The next point is the minimize training cost of selecting tools. So this is also very important, because every tool has its corresponding training cost. If the tool is very easy to use, it has some good features that are some generic features. So the training time of that particular tool will not be very much. Now, coming towards the end of my presentation, this is the proposed automation process flow that one should, or maybe I have followed it for a period of so many years, and I guess this is a very good process flow which everyone should follow. So for the ones, the first step should be the test tool selection that we have already discussed. And then once we have selected the tool, we have defined the scope of automation. We have done the planning, design, and development. So these are the planning, designing, and development of the test scripts. So while developing the test scripts, you should follow all the development processes, and you should be able to plan, design, and develop good test scripts. And then you execute those particular scripts on your application over and over again, and then you should have the capability of maintaining all the scripts with the changes in all the applications. So that brings an end to my presentation. So now I'm here to answer all of your queries. So if you have any questions during the presentation, you would have lots of queries. Just shoot down all the questions, and I'll be answering these questions right now.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Avneet. It was a great session. Attendees have started sending in their questions. I hope you're able to see them.
Yes, I'm seeing the questions now. All right, so I'll just go through the questions. So the first question is, what are the present challenges in automation? This was asked by Madurai. So if you see the present challenges in automation, what are challenges? Challenges are some of those things which you have not done correctly. And then, because if you follow the entire processes which I have documented, I would ensure that you will not be facing any kind of challenges in automation. Challenges in automation would occur if you have to execute, you have decided to automate a thing, you have started doing the automation, but at a later point of time you feel that I'm not able to go forward. Why? There might be many reasons for that. If you start doing a backtracking, you would see that this tool was not fit for this particular my application, so that's why I'm facing a challenge. Or maybe this application was not suited for automation, and that's why I'm facing a challenge. So these are some of the technical challenges which could be very well prevented if you follow the right automation approach. The second question by Madurai itself is how to ensure the security mechanism in automation testing. Yeah, this is a very good question. We need to ensure that we have to ensure a security mechanism. For example, if we are using some kind of login and passwords, so we should follow some kind of encryption method. We should not give the parameter of password in plain text, because anyone who would see your script would be able to figure out what is your password. So you should use a good encrypted methodologies for doing your testing, and especially with passwords, you have to follow the encryption method. The next question by Pankaj is how to calculate ROI after automation is implemented in practical sense. An example will be great. All right, so let's take an example. You need to find an ROI for an application. For example, you have developed a new banking application that I discussed before, and you need to develop an ROI for this. So first of all, you have to see that what is the size of your application. You can do either a function point estimation or a use case estimation. You can follow any kind of method. You can first determine the size of the application, and once you have the size of the application, after that you have to see what is your the testing effort, and what would be your function testing effort, what would be your regression testing effort, your load testing, your all the types of testing you should write down, and you should calculate a total effort, and then this effort would be turned into the cost. by multiplying it with number of the resources and cost of each resource. You will find one figure, and then you do the same analysis with reduced kind of resources, and you take an automation tool for which the cost of the automation tool. So you add the cost of the automation tool, you multiply with an with the sorry, you add the resources, not multiply. You add the uh, uh, resource count, the cost of the resource, and then you can multiply it with the number of runs and see if you have to do 5 runs of a testing or 5 rounds of testing. In that case, what should be the ROI? So you will have both of these figures, and I'm sure that the automation figure will have a much lower figure than your manual figure, than your manual testing figure. The next question from Pankaj itself is, if an organization has decided to go for automation tool, then what all things to take care to define the automation framework? Yes, most of the times it is a case that the organization has already decided to go with a particular automation tool. So you are not left with a choice of uh, of maybe evaluating a tool specific to that application. So in that case, what you can do is you can see the uh, features of the tool and map your application with that particular feature, and then you can straight away say that these particular test cases cannot be automated because the existing tool which you have selected for us does not support these features. So you can just talk with the management and say that these are the features that I can test, and I will go ahead for testing these test cases, and the rest of the test cases are not automable because the tool does not support this particular test. The next question again by Pankaj is how TDD can be implemented through automation testing. So by TDD, what I can perceive is test design and development. If I'm correct, then I'll just answer this query that it can be implemented through automation testing. So all the test design and development. So design has to be done beyond the tool. Design is not specific to the tool, and then the development is very much specific to the tool, because every tool will have a different scripting language. So you have to develop your scripts by using the same scripting language. So the next question is from Faraz, that how will you observe which test cases should be automated, and also regarding tool Selenium can also be automated in Firefox, not another bus, but QTP is costly. Which one to choose? Well, this is very much specific. I would like to know more about your application. So based on the application, I would be able to suggest a tool. So if you see you will find my email ID. You can just mail me with some more details, and I will be glad to help you out on this. The next question is from Pankaj, that I'm a manual tester, but my background is that of a VB programming, SQL Server, and Oracle. How should I plan my career to be a master in automation testing, and which tool should I initially focus on? So see, Pankaj, since you have a manual background and you are good in VB programming, so you can see tools like QTP. QTP has a very good support for VB scripting. So you can go with QTP. QTP is very in a huge demand at this point of time, and I think that it would serve you better than other tools. Because Selenium, you cannot go into Selenium because for that you would require some good Java concepts. Pankaj again says that as you told, GUIs is very difficult to automate. How do you think automation can fit for a mobile app testing where GUI is not stable? See, it is not very difficult, but yes, it is difficult if you compare it with the other interfaces like the command line interface and the APIs. So these are bit easy to automate as compared to GUIs. So GUI sorry, I would say that GUI is much more difficult as compared to those technologies. But if you see, if you see the capabilities of the function testing tools which we have right now, so I don't think that it is a huge challenge, and you should be able to test GUI very effectively. Suresh is asking, does application needs to be completely stable to start automation, because we would go for automation when there is a good case of regression testing, which in turn means that application is not stable. So by stability, what I mean is that one application is divided into various modules. So once you have developed one module, you feel that the first module is stable enough, you can go in for automation till the time the other modules are being developed. So by the stability of the application, I don't mean that the entire application is developed, but yes, the module for which you are doing the automation or your automation scope should be much stable. Ravikant is asking that what will be the approach if company demands automation testing of a new application from the initial round or phase? See, again, I would reiterate the same point that if the company demands automation testing of a new application, so for that particular new application, so I would need some of the details of what type of application it is. It is a web-based application. What are elements are being used in that application. So based on this only, I will be able to tell you the approach, and I would like you to just mail me some more details at my email address, and I will be getting back to you on this. Shantanu is asking, I have a few questions. Number one, in one of your slides, you touched upon ROI. Don't you think ROI is diminished with adoption of automation? Factors like pricing, licensing of tools, stability of the tool, etc., and additional maintenance of overheads, parallel, and we perhaps have so many points to touch upon. Yes, I have briefly touched upon ROI because the topic of this the topic of this presentation was not going into detail. Maybe I can take another session on ROI sometimes later, and I will be showing you some sample ROI formats, and I can do a good maybe presentation on ROI itself so that you have a very clear idea. I just touched upon ROI because it was one of the benefits of automation. Second question is, your presentation didn't speak anything about functional or non-functional testing. Isn't it true that automation is simply limited to UI testing? How do you make certain for a functionality test automation may be effective, whereas non-functional testing may need the help of a tool? Let me know your thought. Okay. So see, I'm just basically talking about automation in general. For automation in general, functional testing and non-functional testing are just the types of the testing. So you have different automation tools for all of these things. For example, you cannot use QTP for doing a load testing, but you have another tool like load runner for doing a load testing. So that's what I'm saying, that based on your requirements and based on your application, you have to choose a tool which is optimum for your own needs. Third question is, why do you think we need to have 1,000 test cases for an effective test completion even if you have automated it? How do you ascertain an effectivity of 1,000 test cases in subsequent builds? Well, this was just an example. I didn't mean that 1,000 test cases would mean 1,000 and not 900 or maybe 1,200. Every application has its own size, and based on the size of the application, you can determine the number of the test cases that you could build. Your fourth question is, in your how to automate slide, don't you think it is too much of a task? I would rather ask you to, in such a case, who pays for this activity specifically in a fixed bid project. See, if there is a fixed bid project, you have to have time for evaluating your automation strategy. Until and unless you are not spending this much of time in analyzing what you need to automate, you will be, I'm sure you will not be able to have or develop a good automation framework. Because once you plan accordingly, once you have a good and stable automation plan, in that case, only you will be able to succeed in automation. Otherwise, you would have some challenges at a later point of time, and then anyways, your fixed bid project would be in jeopardy then. Janesh ask a question that which test tool is best for report testing. So which type of report is it? I would need some more details on the report. If it is an HTML report or maybe a report which is generated in a PDF format or a CSV format. So maybe if you could provide me some more details, I will be able to answer this question. Rohit says that how important is it to know scripting knowledge? I mean, do we need an expert level of automation? See, scripting is very important, because without scripting, if you are just doing a record and playback, you will be left with the tool's capability of creating its own script, because because all the tools have this an automated capability that whenever they're recording internally, they are generating the scripts. And if you see in the expert view of that particular tool, you will actually see the script over there, which the tool has recorded automatically for you. Now, if you need to make any kind of changes in that particular script, so if it will be very easy for you that if, when you know the scripting, you can easily make any kind of changes in that particular tool. Dipen says us that if there are frequent changes in the application, is it a good idea to go for automation? So that also depends. Future frequent changes in that particular module for which you are doing then automation, then it is not a good idea to go for automation. You should wait till the time it gets stable. But if the changes are done in some other module and it has to be indicated at a later point of time, then yes, you can go for automation. The next question is from Praveen, that any suggestion for best tool available in the market for automation of mobile application testing, which supports all mobile platforms like Android, iOS, Windows, and BlackBerry. Yeah, Praveen, you can try out Selenium. It is I have used it for testing of Android and iOS and BlackBerry. I have not tested it for Windows, but I think that it should work for Windows also. Karthik says that how to use test automation in products which use Agile Scrum methodology. So in Agile also, you can use automation but what will happen is you will be creating some small scripts. I would rather say that instead of script, you should create some functions which can be integrated with each other at a later point of time. Next question from Praveen is there any free tool which can be used for mobile application? Yeah, like I have answered your previous question, you can try out Selenium. Sandhya is asking, do we require any programming skills for automation testing? Unfortunately, yes, you require. So it's better that you should start learning your programming basics. It will definitely help you further. SHG asks, could you please elaborate more on budget slide with example? By budget, I would mean ROI. So ROI is I've just given an example in one of the questions above. So I guess your questions must have been answered by that example. Praveen asks again, how to estimate the test automation efforts? Any generic template which you can share? So these test automation efforts would definitely depend on the tool and as well as your application. You have to first figure out that how many test cases you have to automate. Once you will have the test case count, and then you have chosen a tool, and you would feel that one test case can be automated in, let's say, 40 hours in one tool. So I have 10 test cases, so it will take around 400 hours for me to you can just make this estimate. So there's no generic template for this. It is based on every organization. Vivek is asking which part of automation tasks we can cover when you do not have full clarity about the requirement of the product. So once you do not have a full clarity of the requirement of the product, then I think that there's no point of taking up any kind of automation task. The first step is to freeze the requirements. Once you are able to freeze the requirement, then only you will be able to do justification with automation testing. Sujata is asking, what are the tools which are mostly used for automation? Which tools require minimum effort for upgrade and maintenance? So this also depends on the application which you have to test. So mostly applications are web-based, and web-based we have different tools for web-based, we have different tools for mobile applications, we have different tools for client servers. So it depends. There's another question from Triyaranjan. I'm sorry if I'm not able to pronounce it correctly. Are we have any specific things to automate web and desktop apps? What do you mean by web or desktop apps? I'm not able to find it clearly. Can you please explain again? Rohit is asking record and playback of record and play and comprises of what percent of automation testing? Okay, so record and playback is just around, you can say, it should not be more than 20%. So it can just record and playback with basic activities or basic flows, but you have to put in some kind of checkpoints, you have to put in some validations, so it should not be more than 25%, that is, I'm sure. Sanjay is asking, is automation testing suitable for internet-based applications? Yes, it is very suitable and very good for internet-based applications. Ashish is asking, which is the best automation testing or manual for startup as a career? So it depends on your aspirations, what you want to do. If you want to, uh, uh, it depends on entirely on you. If you have a good programming logic, you have a good programming background, then you can go in for automation. But if you think that you are not very good in programming or you're not very good in logic building, then you should go in for manual. Guru Murthy is asking how the security testing can perform in automation testing. Sorry, scrutiny or security, I'm not able to get it, on which tool. So this is again also a quite a question which is not a generic one. So I would suggest you could just mail me your question in detail and I would get back to you on this. Kiran is asking which tool you prefer to test web dashboard application, ASP.NET application. So in ASP.NET also, I think if you have the that much of funds available in your organization, you should go in for QTP because QTP has a very good integration with ASP.NET applications. Nihar is asking, Selenium is restricted for web browsing application testing, but for mobile applications like PTT, MMS, which automation tool we should use. So for these kind of functionality like PTT and MMS, I've not yet found a chance or opportunity to evaluate some of these tools. But yes, this is a good question. I would just suggest that you can just mail this question to me, so and I'll get back to you on this after finding out best application for MMS and PTT. Then the last question from Rohit is, what is a good certification for QTP? So HP has its own certification. You can contact, you can just see the website for HP QTP. They have their own certification for QTP and Quality Center. So you can very well go ahead and do that certification. It carries a good value in the IT industry. Just now I have received another question from Marwade. Which tool we use for testing for web development? So for web development also there are lots of kinds of web applications. I would request you to mail me with your detailed query and I will be responding back to you. Another question from Gurumurthy has just come up, that can we able to perform security testing in automation? Yes, security testing, which kind of security testing are you talking? If you are talking about database security, yes, we can test. Automation tools like QTP, they have their own encrypted mechanism. There is an exe file also which you can use for encrypting and decrypting the values. So you can use that particular file and you can easily do the security testing for that. So yeah, I guess I've been able to answer all the queries. There were lots of questions, and if anyone still has questions, I would encourage you to just mail me your questions and I'll be responding to you in a couple of days or so. And thank you all for attending this session. Over to you, Mohini.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your details, Avneet.
Yep.
I'm sure our users got insights into their questions. The questions were very well answered. Thank you so much for the session.
Thank you.
I would also like to thank all our participants for their support in making this webinar a success. The recording of this session would be available on techgig.com by evening. Thank you all. Have a great day.